The ley system discovered by Alfred Watkins of Hereford in the 1920s was first put forward as a waymarking system from prehistoric times. However, it was soon noticed that more recent structures, particularly places of worship of all faiths, would often fall on the leys. It was as if the system was self-repairing by subconsciously influencing the location of places of worship, and it seems to continue into modern times. In Shepton Mallet in Somerset recently, I came upon this circle of stones round a huge Scots pine in front of the Townsend shopping park, which is on the site of the old Clark's shoe factory. It's clearly not ancient, but because of the leys found through a Welsh eidsteddfod circle some years ago, I wondered if it might be subconsciously sited. A very good ley was found passing through it, running from the high Mendip to Dorset. It starts at a tumulus near Poole Farm, near the Castle of Comfort Inn on top of the Mendips. This is part of a barrow cemetery there. The Castle of Comfort is a curious name, but it's believed to have earned it for providing refreshments for prisoners travelling from Wells Jail to Gibbet's Brow, where they were due to be hanged in the reign of the notorious hanging Judge Jeffreys. There is also a Roman road across the Mendips, which crosses the B3134 a few hundred metres south of the Castle of Comfort, which seems to be the one which meets the Fosse Way at the important ancient site of Beacon Hill near Shepton Mallet. The ley goes on to cross this road at a track road multi-junction on the B3135. The Castle of Comfort Inn and its crossroads. The line then goes through the edge of a clump at Hill Grove, northeast of Wells. This is on a long straight stretch of the A39, the alignment of which goes through a group of tumuli at Shepton Mendip and the Green Oar crossroads. And in the southward direction through St Cuthbert's Church in Wells, St Edmund's Hill in Glastonbury, and then St John's Church there, and Wearyall Hill with its legend of St Joseph of Arimathea. It goes through the main crossroads in Glastonbury, grazing the Abbey land. This ley goes through a roundabout with another possibly subconsciously sited standing stone near West Mendip Hospital. The ley we were following before then goes from Hill Grove through a coniferous clump at Washingpool, East Horrington, before continuing to Shepton Mallet and the subconsciously sited circle. Shepton Mallet was in a strategically important place for the Romans. They set up a small town near the site of the existing British settlement, complete with villas, a pottery, no fewer than 3 cemeteries and other important buildings. Nearby was a Roman temple. However, after about 3 centuries, the Roman town gave way to a small Christian settlement. The 1990 excavations at Shepton unearthed what seemed to be the earliest evidence for a Christian burial, the Cairo amulet, although some doubt was cast upon its authenticity by analysis of the silver. During the Roman occupation of Britain, Shepton stood by one of the most important roads in the country, the Fosse Way. Built in the 1st century AD, this military supply road formed an unbroken stone road from Exeter to Lincoln. Almost arrow straight along its whole length, it passed through Ilchester and Bath on its way north. Midway between these 2 towns stood an existing settlement, with its political power centred on nearby Maysbury Hill Fort. For the Romans, this was a logical place to set up a fortress. No firm evidence of a military encampment has been found in Shepton Mallet, but this is a very likely site. However, several Roman sites have been located, providing clear proof that there was a sizable Roman town in the area. Evidence of the status of the Shepton Mallet area comes from a group of tumuli at Beacon Hill, the largest known group of ancient burial mounds in Somerset. Bronze Age barrows, one containing the cremated remains of a teenage girl in an urn, a circular earthwork and a standing stone still remain on the hill, which is on the line of the Fosse Way. The cremated remains were reburied in the barrow in a replica urn with pagan ceremony. There is an equinoctial east-west lay running from here to Wells Cathedral. The Standing Stone at Beacon Hill. The lay we are following then goes through the multi-junction at Canard's grave on the Fosse Way, where, according to legend, the ghost of 17th century publican Giles Canard still walks. According to legend, he was a highwayman and rustler who was eventually hanged for sheep stealing. But in fact, the origin of the name may be considerably older. The name may date back some 1,000 years, and the association with the death of Tom Taverner may be a later invention. Graef is the Anglo-Saxon form of grove, a small wooded area, and may have nothing to do with burial places. Kinehard was an Anglo-Saxon prince who may have owned land in the area. The name may therefore originally have been Kinehard's grave or Kinehard's grove. Alternatively, Canard may simply be a corruption of Kineherd. In this case, the original name may well have been Kineherd's Grove, or simply a place where cattle drovers gathered their herds together prior to milking, selling or slaughtering. So this could be the second grove site on the lay. It next goes along about a mile of coincident road to St Peter's Church, Evercreech. There was probably a church here in the Saxon period. Certainly the existing late 15th century church stands atop much older foundations. The glory of St Peter's is the superb West Tower, one of the finest in Somerset, a county noted for its medieval church towers. From here the lay goes to Creech Hill, a univalate hill fort about a mile northwest of Bruton. Lamiat Beacon marks the highest point of the hill and is the site of a Romano-Celtic temple which was in use from 250 AD to 375 AD. But the lay misses this. According to the folklorist Catherine Briggs, Creech Hill is said to be haunted by a ghost known as the Bull Beggar. From traditions collected by Ruth Tong in 1906 and published in County Folklore, she recounts how in the 1880s 2 bodies had been dug up during quarrying operation. Afterwards the hill became haunted by a black uncanny shape and unseen footsteps. A farmer coming home late one night saw a figure lying in the road and approached to offer help, whereupon it suddenly got up and chased him all the way to his own door. His family ran to his rescue and saw the figure bounding away with wild laughter. The line then goes over Chorley Hill, West Bruton, and on to Windmill Hill, Wincanton. A Bronze Age burial was found in 1870 during work at Ireson's quarry on this hill. It contained a single burial with a large beaker, staghorn and flint scraper. The lay passes through the site of this burial. The next point seems to be Nash Court, Marnhull, which originally belonged to the Abbey of Glastonbury, but Henry VIII gave it to Catherine Parr, the last of his wives, in 1544. From her it passed to Edward VI and then to Elizabeth I, after which it passed through the families of several noblemen and eminent citizens. A community of nuns rented it from 1795 to 1807. Finally, on this map, the lay reaches the parish church of St Nicholas Manston, which has a 13th century chancel, 14th century nave and 15th century west tower, in the style of the 11th century. It comprises chancel, nave, north aisle, south porch and western tower. The church was restored in 1885 and can be found adjacent to Manston House, a short walk from the main road along a private drive. The perpendicular west tower with its fine carvings is dated 1534, while parts of the chancel and north aisle, now curtained off from the main part of the church, are early English. The interior is adorned by a fine barrel roof. This lay goes through 11 points on the map, not including the Shepton Circle, 3 of which are prehistoric, 3 churches, if one includes Nash Court, which will have had a chapel when occupied by religious communities, 2 possible grove sites and 2 multi-junctions on Roman roads. It seems to be good evidence for the possibility of subconscious sighting. I found the lay described above 7 years ago, but have recently found 3 others going through the circle. One comes up through Butley Cross, a crossroads with a wayside cross. As the First World War ended, it was decided in Butley that the wayside cross on Butley Hill should be made into a war memorial. It was restored to about 20 feet high, and on the stem a figure of St. Leonard, the patron saint of Butley, was placed, and a figure of Christ on the top of the cross. It continues to touch the eastern edge of Park Wood. Paul Jenkins writes on his website map of the ancient landscape around Glastonbury something which might appeal to those who believe in the Glastonbury zodiac. Park Wood near Butley is the centre or hub of this mystical zodiac. It forms what might be perceived as the giant head of a dragon or serpent, and legends of snakes abound in Butley. Mary Kane, in her book The Glastonbury Zodiac, writes of a legend where every year a knight in shining armour cuts the head off a snake, but she may have been referring to Butley Wood and not Park Wood. Personally, I think she meant the latter, with its situation at the centre of the zodiac. The line continues through St Dunstan's Church, Boltonsborough, which was built in the 15th century. This is also within the Somerset zodiac, or Temple of the Stars, found by Catherine Maltwood. From here it goes through Worthy Farm, where the Glastonbury Festival has been held for many years. Whether it goes through the pyramid stage is not certain, though it seems likely that would be subconsciously sighted. Researcher John Michel was here in 1971, before going on to the first lay hunters' moot in Hereford, called in the press Mystic's Picnic. It then goes on through a crossroads at Lambert's Hill to the Shepton Mallet Circle, and on to the prehistoric sites on Beacon Hill, before passing through 2 more crossroads at Holcombe and Terry Hill near Radstock. Another of the lays comes through St Nicholas Church at West Pennard, which dates from the 15th century. From the 13th to the 15th century it was a chapelry of the Church of St John the Baptist in Glastonbury. It was dedicated to St Nicholas in 1210. From here the lay goes through a triangulation pillar spot marked 120 to the Shepton Mallet Circle, and then on to the Church of St Peter and Paul in Shepton Mallet, which dates from the 12th century. There's evidence of a church on the site from before the Norman conquest of 1066, and the font may date from that time. The only other remains are the walls round the chancel arch. It was originally intended to have a spire, but this was never built. The lay then goes through a crossroads tracks on the Fosse Way, before coming to the Church of the Holy Trinity, Coleford, which was built in 1831. Cole is a place name element mentioned by Alfred Watkins as being connected with lays. After this it comes to Kingsdown Camp, the remains of a small Iron Age settlement with evidence of Roman occupation. 2 paved entrances were found, the original to the south-southeast and the Roman to the northeast. According to the Somerset Historic Environment Record, this is a small Iron Age enclosure, which was refortified in the late 1st or 2nd century. Leslie Grinsell mentions it in his Folklore of Prehistoric Sites in Britain. It's said to be the site of a fierce battle between 2 kings, at which both of them died. The third lay skirts the edge of King's Castle, which is an Iron-Aged enclosed hilltop settlement at the southwestern edge of the Mendip Hills near Wells. Though there are many prehistoric sites in the surrounding area, it remains one of the earliest known settlements in the immediate vicinity of Wells, and may have been a precursor to the present-day city.
It consists of 2 or 3 interlinked sub-enclosures, with what appears to be a field system extending to the east. An unusual layout, the site remains relatively little studied and has not been archaeologically excavated. This is a LiDAR picture. From here the line goes to the Church of St Mary the Virgin in Croscombe, which is primarily from the 15th and 16th century, with 19th century restoration. After passing through the Shepton Mallet circle, it passes through a crossroads at Kilmington, then goes to a Neolithic causewayed camp on Whitesheet Down, just to the north of the town of Mere, Wiltshire. It's part of a site also including Bronze Age barrows and a large Iron Age hill fort. Then it continues to St Mary's Church, West Knoyle, which dates from about 1230, but all that remains of the original structure is the massive well-built tower added in the 15th century. A major reconstruction was carried out in 1879 when the vestry and organ chamber were added. Finally the line reaches Chapel Farm, Upton, East Knoyle. North and west of the village of East Knoyle, a network of tree-lined lanes, in places deeply cut into the greensand and elsewhere lined with cottages, link it with the hamlets of Upton, the upper settlement, and Milton, the middle settlement. Both are recorded in the 13th century, and Upton may have had its own chapel of ease, as Chapel Farm is one of several farmsteads and cottages dispersed along its street, survivors from a formerly more populous settlement.